Tonight, the Prime Minister details his plan to reduce student debt and expand access to fee-free TAFE. I'm Jessica Van Vonderen. This is ABC News Queensland. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris make last-minute dashes across crucial swing states, plus the VP's surprise appearance on a sketch comedy show. North Queenslanders whose homes were in the path of the scrapped pumped hydro project given the chance to buy back their land. And calls to wind back shark nets during whale migration after a shocking season for whale rescues. Good evening. Australians burdened with student debt will have 20% of their loans wiped as part of Labor's pre-election pitch aimed at easing cost of living pressures for young people. It's part of a $500 million package which the coalition has labelled a cash splash in place of real reform. Here's political reporter Stephanie Dalzell.
It's beginning to look a lot like an election campaign. Big energy and big promises. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese addressing the party faithful in Adelaide with a US-style stump speech.
We're so determined to win the election next year.
Vowing to expand and legislate access to fee-free TAFE for Australians and wipe billions of dollars in unpaid student loans if returned to power.
A re-elected Labor government will take 20% off student debt for everyone who has one.
Under the pitch, a university graduate with the average debt of about $27,000 would see more than $5,000 wiped from their outstanding loan. It builds on yesterday's promise to lift the income threshold from when people have to start paying off their debt from $54,000 to $67,000. All up, the government's promising to cut close to $20 billion in student loan debt for more than 3 million Australians.
I think that's great to hear. It's certainly not enough.
I probably would go back if I knew that they were going to do that.
The move will cost the budget $500 million, but the government argues it will address intergenerational inequity without driving up inflation.
For a lot of young people, they're straight out of uni, they're on a low income, and they already have to start paying off their HECS bill. This gets them a little bit of relief.
This isn't real reform. This doesn't change the student fees that somebody who starts uni next year pays. This is simply a cash splash.
After a turbulent week with claims the Prime Minister received free flight upgrades from Qantas, the government wants to regain control of the agenda, using this announcement to try to shift the focus back to cost of living issues. But that's proving difficult. With revelations, the Education Minister solicited and received the flight benefit in 2019.
Good pick up, mate. That was a personal trip. That was a situation where I had just got out of hospital. I had surgery on my leg.
Politicians touching down in Canberra ahead of Parliament's return.
Just looking forward to a good week. Labor's focused on building Australia's future.
Presumably, flying economy. Stephanie Dalzell, ABC News, Canberra.
Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have set a frantic pace in the final days before the US election, visiting multiple swing states. Both candidates have focused on their appeal to women in a campaign where the gender divide has become a defining feature. North America correspondent Jade McMillan begins our coverage from the battleground state of Michigan.
Now, Kamala, take my Pamela.
A last-minute cameo on late-night TV. Kamala Harris coming face-to-face with the comedian who's portrayed her on Saturday Night Live.
I'm going to vote for us. Great. Any chance you are registered in Pennsylvania?
In the nation's capital, women marched to the White House in support of the Vice President.
First black woman. I'm a black woman, and she represents me.
She will lead our country forward.
The gender gap is stark in this campaign. Kamala Harris is performing better with women, while Donald Trump attracts more support from men.
There's some women that are very beautiful in the audience. I would never say that, because if I said like that, her, we got a lot of her. If I said they were beautiful, that's the end of my political career.
In the battleground states of North Carolina and Georgia, the Vice President continued her focus on reproductive rights.
Ours is a fight for freedom. Like the fundamental freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do.
Donald Trump also campaigned in North Carolina, but took a detour to Virginia, a state not widely considered to be in play for Republicans.
I could have said, the hell with everything. I could have had the greatest life in the world. Instead, I got missing a little piece of my ear.
His supporters in Arizona trying to boost turnout in their state to get the former president over the line.
I just think that he's the best choice for America. His stance on immigration and the economy, and I think he brings more people together than he tears apart.
The candidates have narrowed their focus in the final days of this extraordinary campaign to states like here in Michigan and Pennsylvania, part of the so-called blue wall that could hand either side the keys to the White House.
This is a famous...
More than 70 million people have already voted. There are still millions more to reach in the final 2 days. Jade McMillan, ABC News, Detroit, Michigan.
Well, just days out from Election Day, the latest polling suggests the race for the White House is still neck and neck. And the numbers get even closer when you look at the crucial swing states. Here's US election analyst Casey Briggs.
It's only a few days now until Election Day, and the contest itself is a battle of 50 states and the first to 270 Electoral College votes. But you've been hearing mostly about just these 7 battleground states, the northern ones, Pennsylvania, Michigan and Wisconsin. The southern states, we've got Georgia and North Carolina, and out west, the states of Arizona and Nevada. Polls are close, within the margin of error in all of them. But if the person who's currently leading in polling goes on to win that state, this would be the result. Kamala Harris on 251, Donald Trump on 268, with Pennsylvania genuinely even Stevens, the winner there determining the next president. But polls aren't precise, and if the polls miss in Trump's favour, well, he could potentially win all 3 of these swing states up in the Rust Belt, and that would give him a comfortable election win. And if the polls miss in Harris's favour, well, you could easily see the reverse. Kamala Harris holding on and sweeping those so-called blue wall states. She'd be in the hunt in the southern states too, but those alone would be enough to hand Harris the win. The polls are close, but that doesn't necessarily mean the final result in the Electoral College will be a nail-biter. But we'll have to wait a few days to see, well, any votes, because right now the race to 270 stands at 0 Electoral College votes apiece. And if it is a nail-biter, it could take days for one of these candidates to hit 270.
Queensland's new Premier says the search is underway to find sites for new pumped hydro projects. At a town hall in the state's north, David Crisafulli met with locals to confirm he's scrapped the former government's controversial pumped hydro project slated for west of Mackay.
For Youngala locals worried about their future, a surprise visit from the new Premier helped ease anxieties.
Huge elation. Yeah, it was very exciting.
David Crisafulli took to last month's election a promise to scrap the Pioneer Burdekin pumped hydro scheme west of Mackay. It would have been the largest renewable project of its kind in the world.
It never stacked up financially, it never stacked up environmentally, it didn't have traditional owner consent. More importantly, this community was never treated with the respect they deserved.
The Premier says negotiations are now underway to allow landholders to buy back land that was resumed by Queensland Hydro earlier this year.
It's been a huge boost to morale to have it scrapped. There's going to be a huge recovery period. A lot of families have moved on. The stress just got way too much for them.
Mr Crisafulli says he will pursue the former Labor government's other proposed pumped hydro project at Barumba Dam south of Gympie.
We do believe that it can be done in a respectful way to the environment, and if we can make sure that it's affordable, it can also be a project that Queenslanders can benefit.
He's also planning 5 or 6 smaller hydro projects around the state. But the Queensland Conservation Council has voiced concern the LNP's proposed alternative sites could be just as harmful for the environment. It's calling on the government to name the prospective locations within 100 days. Eden Gillespie, ABC News, Youngalla.
Big numbers of whales have become caught in shark and fishing nets along Australia's east coast this season. Scientists are using tracking devices to try to understand how to prevent whales getting trapped.
A humpback whale calf wrapped in fishing line off the Gold Coast last week.
If they're not freed, then they are either stuck in that line and in the rope for all their life, which could actually end after a few months because they're starving to death.
This Kira resident has reported multiple shark net entanglements this season.
It's awful to witness.
She wants to see shark nets removed from August to October when humpbacks travel up and down our coast.
It's not just now the whale's life at risk, it's the rescuer's life at risk, and that can all be avoided just by having these nets out.
SeaWorld's rescue team has been flat out all migration season.
This year's been unfortunately very, very busy, and majority of that has been fishing gear. So we've had rescues everywhere from up north of Caloundra up that way all the way down to the Victorian border.
The trapped whales become highly distressed.
All they want to do is get away from our boat. They usually show you with their body language, but also vocalisations. You can hear them, it sounds like a screaming noise sometimes.
After a successful rescue, the team attaches a tracking device. This whale tagging program is providing scientists with more information on how entanglements impact the species.
Looking at where are the hot spots, where are the most of the whales getting entangled, and what type of gear is impacting these whales.
It's not all bad news. The trackers have uncovered some quirky behaviour only seen on the Gold Coast. Exfoliating is now part of a humpback's beauty routine.
Sand rolling, so humpback whales are rolling in sand as a new behaviour. But then we also discover it more and more in newborn calves, so we do see a lot of the younger whales come in here with their mums and they're resting.
Julia Andre, ABC News, Gold Coast.
An army of 10,000 soldiers and police have been deployed in Spain to assist with recovery efforts after devastating floods. The death toll is now more than 200 and is expected to climb further still. Heavy rain sent torrents of water through the Valencia region, turning streets into raging rivers and leaving towns cut off.
In just 8 hours, a year's worth of rain was dumped on the Spanish region of Valencia. Dramatic rescue operations took place from the air as rescue crews scrambled to save lives in danger. As the waterline dropped, the full impact was revealed. A sea of mud, streets in ruin, shops, homes and communities completely devastated. Rescuers overwhelmed and exhausted as the search for victims continues.
There were lots of people in the cars on the first floor, and when the water arrived, they left, as they thought water was not going to reach the first floor, but when it did, they said, "Let's go, let's go."
More than 200 people have been killed, but that toll is expected to rise as Spain's government rushes in aid to help with recovery efforts.
I have ordered the deployment of a Navy amphibious ship with accommodation, surgery operating rooms, helicopters and a fleet of support vehicles urgently to the area.
From the air, the true scale of the devastation can be most clearly seen. These satellite images revealing the extent of the flooding. But for others, it only takes a look out of the window.
My wife and I don't want to live here anymore. It's already a nightmare. As soon as a bit of rain comes down, you just can't. At the end, you lose everything. I'm sorry, I feel helpless. I feel powerless. And the government does nothing.
Thousands of volunteers are now helping authorities deliver food, water and rebuilding. A community banding together in the most shattering of moments. Henry Zwartz, ABC News.
The family of a Queensland woman allegedly murdered in Bangladesh says she was 4 months pregnant but had a miscarriage days before her death. The ABC understands that Bangladeshi Australian citizen Rahana Parvin was hospitalised on July the 3rd after suffering a miscarriage. She'd travelled to Bangladesh in early June with her eldest daughter and was reported missing on August the 31st. Ms Parvin's body was found 2 weeks later, buried in a small village in Bangladesh. Ms Parvin's mother accused 4 people of abducting her, including her son-in-law, Olad Hossain. Mr Hossain travelled to Bangladesh in June and returned to Australia in mid-July. No charges have been laid and the ABC does not suggest Mr Hossain was involved in Ms Parvin's death, only that local police have applied for an arrest warrant. Ms Parvin's death received no media coverage in Australia until the ABC's reporting. After being contacted by the ABC, her mother said she felt there could be a pathway to justice in Australia. Israel is again bombarding Lebanon, including the capital Beirut, as negotiations continue over a potential peace deal. 11 were wounded in southern Beirut after an Israeli airstrike, and Hezbollah returned fire, launching rockets into Israel. The latest strikes have raised Lebanon's death toll to nearly 2,900, with more than 13,000 wounded. It comes as Israeli commandos captured a senior Hezbollah official in an operation on northern Lebanon's coast on Friday. The UK has a new opposition leader after Kemi Badenoch was elected leader of the Conservative Party. The Essex MP fought off her rival to win the leadership with more than 50% of the vote. Ms Badenoch takes over from Rishi Sunak, whose cabinet she served in when he was Prime Minister. The self-proclaimed enemy of wokeness is a fan of Margaret Thatcher and has plans to reshape the Conservative Party away from its centrist leanings.
Our party is critical to the success of our country. But to be heard, we have to be honest. Honest about the fact that we made mistakes. Honest about the fact that we let standards slip.
Well, back to the US election now, and if it does go down to the wire, there's growing concern about how parts of the American electorate will respond to a contested vote in the courts. There are signs that the groundwork is being laid in key swing states for possible challenges to the result. North America correspondent Barbara Miller reports from Pennsylvania, a state which could prove decisive in the race for the White House.
Bucks County is the kind of place this election could be won or lost. The Democrats took Bucks outside Philadelphia in 2016 and 2020, but not by much.
I'm here to deliver Pennsylvania for Donald J. Trump.
When Trump became the primary nominee for the Republican Party, I switched parties. I am now Democrat and I'm very passionate about being on the right side of history.
Donald Trump claimed the last election was rigged, leading to the violent insurrection of January the 6th.
38,000 Trump cookies.
Its shadow still hangs over this race.
If it's Harris, would you accept that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so then did Donald Trump win in 2020?
I don't have the facts on that one.
And in communities like this across the swing states, there are fears the groundwork is being laid for another contested result. After an early voting line was briefly cut off, the Trump campaign went to court and got the deadline extended.
We do have wider concerns about voter suppression and election integrity, and the plan is to swamp it out by volume. We need everybody to turn out to vote.
Tens of millions of Americans have already cast their ballot. Volunteers go door to door to make sure the rest actually turn up on election day.
Right now, I am going every day. And I'm doing like 4 hours.
If I garnered one vote, I don't care, that's worth it to me.
I don't know how you can look at this man and not think he's an
Joe
idiot.
Biden and former President Donald Trump. This extraordinary campaign began as a rematch until Joe Biden's shocking debate performance.
With the COVID, with dealing with.
Then came an attempt on Donald Trump's life. The master showman instinctively seizing the moment. Biden finally saw the writing on the wall.
So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation.
I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
When Pennsylvania was called for Joe Biden in 2020, it took him over the 270 electoral college votes needed to secure the White House. He won the state by 80,000 votes. Margins in several other swing states were even smaller. Biden took Arizona by just over 10,000 votes, Georgia by 12,000, and Wisconsin by 20,000. Meaning that although overall Joe Biden got 7 million more votes than Donald Trump, victory came down to just tens of thousands. 4 years on, polls suggest another very tight race in all 7 swing states.
Misinformation and conspiracy theories are swirling about election fraud, some of them amplified by Elon Musk. And there's a real sense here that this could be the calm before the storm.
Do you think, however the election falls, there's going to be legal challenges?
It depends. If it's close, yes. That's why I'm here for a landslide.
I expect it here in Bucks County. They're already trying to gum up the works. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality. They're going to try to claim it no matter what. So as long as we have judges and courts in this country, I think we'll be okay. Because in 2020, every one of their lawsuits failed.
Both camps throwing everything at it in the hope of victory will be decisive. Barbara Miller, ABC News, Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
Surveys have consistently indicated that the economy is the biggest issue for Americans at the election. But there are concerns about the plans of both candidates, as Alan Kohler explains.
When Americans vote on Tuesday, they'll be choosing between economics and, well, something else. Republican candidate Donald Trump has 3 main economic policies: deport at least 11 million illegal immigrants, 60% tariffs on imports from China and up to 20% on everyone else, and cut the company tax rate from 21% to 15%, and a series of other income tax cuts. Democrat candidate Kamala Harris wants to increase the company tax rate to 28% and then spend more than that would raise on extra child support, plus a few other programs. So either candidate would blow out an already blown out federal budget.
Here are their bottom lines. So it's a choice between an increase in the US federal deficit of $3.5 trillion under Harris or $7.5 trillion under Trump, and possibly twice that depending on how much money the tariffs would raise, which probably wouldn't be much since imports would dry up as prices increased. Economists think it would definitely reignite inflation, which is why as Trump's poll numbers have improved, the US dollar has been rising and the Australian dollar falling because it would mean rate cuts in the US would be off.
But Trump's biggest economic policy is mass deportations. Estimates of the impact of that on American GDP range up to 8.9%. So a severe recession or even a depression. That's if it could be done, of course, which is very unlikely.
Economists don't like the rest of Trump's policies either, versus their support for Kamala Harris's policies. More than half of them even support the increase in the company tax rate, and the only things they don't like are the first home buyer grants and penalties for price gouging.
But nobody listens to economists these days, especially Trump voters.
Port Adelaide will host an elimination final in its maiden AFLW final series after defeating the Giants in a one-point thriller at Alberton Oval. The Giants led early before a flurry of late goals turned the game as the Power clinched the win in the final minute. Meanwhile, Hawthorn locked in a top two finish after kicking away late against the Tigers. Brisbane finished third and will face the Hawks in week one of the finals after smashing St Kilda by 27 points. And Essendon soared into the top 8 last night with a 36-point victory over Carlton.
Port Adelaide already had a maiden final spot locked up, but a win was enough to secure a home eliminator. The Giants had other ideas early with 4 first-half goals to lead by 9 at the half.
Down a Goldsworthy, who is a goal sneak.
The Power trailed by 11 at the final change and looked out of the game before stunning the Giants with 2 late goals. Gemma Houghton securing a home final at Alberton next week, with a major in the final minute.
She comes, she's taken a big mark. Can she kick a big goal? Oh, you bet she can, Gemma Houghton!
Hawthorn's surprise season continues with the Hawks to host a qualifying final after edging ahead of the Tigers at Punt Road. Only 2 points separated the two sides midway through the final term. The Hawks kicking 3 late goals to cement a top 2 spot.
Ashmore. Here come the Hawks.
They'll host Brisbane in week 1 of finals after the Lions had to settle for third despite smashing the Saints at Moorabbin.
Anderson gets a look. Ali straightens up and goals.
6 goals in the third quarter blew the game open, including 4 goals in just 4 minutes of play.
Hartle, she turns, she snaps and she goals as well.
Essendon will be sweating on Bonnie Toogood's scan results after she left the field with an ankle injury in the team's win over Carlton last night. Despite losing the star forward, the Bombers booked a place in back-to-back final series with a win over the Blues.
G for goal, they're in. Essendon is finals bound.
The victory moved them above Melbourne into the top 8, ending the Demons' season. Cameron Slessor, ABC News.
Weather now with Jenny Woodward. And Jenny, what can we expect from the weather this week?
Well, Jess, after the wild, stormy weather last week, this week it's going to be about the heat and the fire dangers, but there are a few storms in the mix as well. Hello, everyone. Now, temperatures will be soaring in the southwest of the state with the figures into the mid-40s. And tomorrow, there's an extreme fire danger there with a high risk over most of the interior and across to the central coast. And with the run of hot days and nights, there is a severe heat wave warning for the southwest and the far north. That's all of the orange shading. Well, today 43 in Birdsville and Urundangi, Mount Isa hit 42, Winton 41, but it was about 10 degrees cooler on the tropical coast. 29 for Gladstone, Bundaberg and Toowoomba. Applethorpe had the coolest start on 14. Well, currently we're 23 in the city after a top of 28. It got to 32 in Gatton, 28 on the Gold Coast. Angela was up very early and caught the perfect reflection in the river. Richard and his friends were rewarded with this beautiful sunset after a week-long trek on Moreton Island, while Ian in Caloundra also had blazing skies when he looked over to the Glasshouse Mountains. Well, onto the satellite, and mostly clear skies for Queensland. We've got this weak trough moving through southern districts, so some storms are possible tomorrow, and there's been stormy weather over southern states and across to the west. More showers and storms possible in Sydney tomorrow, a shower for Melbourne and Canberra, cloudy and 23 in Adelaide. Well, let's have a look at the chart, and the gusty northerlies are pulling in ahead of the trough line, bringing in the heat as it moves east, but the line's going to stagnate before it reaches the coast, so we've got the potential for showers, possibly some severe storms on Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, the next trough will come through on Thursday, and that hotter air mass is going to extend north. Conditions should start to ease on the weekend, but we're not going to get a significant cold change. And for the rain outlook this week, some showers in the far north and the chance of those showers and storms in the southeast corner. Let's check forecasts now, and the rest of the tropics will be sunny. There's a strong wind warning north of Cape Tribulation, 32 for Cairns. 43 in Birdsville again, with 45 midweek, and we're looking at northwest northeasterly winds gusting up to 45 kilometres an hour. There might be a late shower or storm over the Warrego and the Maranoa, but central districts should be staying sunny. We've got a top of 34 in Monto. In the southeast, a little cloud and a shower or storm possible on the southern border ranges and into the granite belt. It's going to be a stormy 34 for Warwick tomorrow, up to 33 in Gympie. Brisbane's heading for 30. There's a little bit of cloud about. North-northeasterly winds up to 36 degrees expected in Gatton, 34 for Ipswich. On the Bay, northerlies to 20 knots, seas to 1.5 metres, and temperatures looking very summery with 36 to 38 degrees later in the week. Jess, that is not what we want in spring, and we've also got storms possible for much of the week.
Goodness me, lots happening. Thanks, Jenny. That is ABC News to the moment. Good night.
Good night.